Good afternoon, all. I am John Powderly, Grants and Planning Outreach Specialist with FEMA Region 9. It's 1 p.m. Welcome to the FEMA Grants and Training session. We have two presenters in this session. First, Jocelyn Madison-Kelly, Grants Management Specialist with FEMA Region 9, and also Region 9's lead for Tribal Hazard Mitigation Assistance grants, will be giving you information about the grants that are available for hazard mitigation projects. This includes BRIC, HMGP, and perhaps others. If you have projects that you want to do for your community that will reduce long-term the risk from natural hazards, this is the way FEMA can help. And Jocelyn is exactly the person to talk to. After Jocelyn, we'll have Christopher Poehlmann, someone that y'all might know, FEMA Region 9 Tribal Liaison. He'll talk about training opportunities with FEMA, training opportunities that can help your community's preparedness when a disaster strikes, both and even after, during the not just response, but also the recovery phase. Now, we're going to go through, we hope we're going to be providing good information to y'all. That's certainly our intent. What we're going to do is go through the presentations, and during the presentations, please put your questions in the chat. We will be doing what we can to monitor the questions as they come up, and we are definitely looking at the questions, but there's a pretty good chance we're going to wait until the end before we answer the questions. I hope that's okay with y'all. So with that, Jocelyn, are you ready to go?
Yes, let me pull this up. Let me go back. Okay, can you see everything?
Yes, I can. I can see your slides.
Perfect. Okay, thanks so much. Today we'll be providing a high-level overview of each of the programs, as John mentioned, as well as discussing a few helpful resources before handing it over to Chris to provide some information on training and public and individual assistance. The remaining time we have will be to address any questions you may have. And with that, I'll get started with the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program. Oh, sorry, actually, I was a slide ahead. Just to start, hopefully a few of you joined the session which covered the importance of creating and maintaining an active hazard mitigation plan. In case you didn't, please note that it is a requirement in order to be eligible for any of the 3 HMA programs that we will be discussing today. So definitely note that when considering your funding options. Now onto the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program. So the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program provides funding to rebuild in a way that reduces or mitigates future disaster losses. HMGP funding is available when authorized under a Presidential Major Disaster Declaration in the areas of the state requested by the governor. Federally recognized tribes may also submit a request for a Presidential Major Disaster Declaration within their impacted areas. It's also important to note that this funding is available to territories, local governments, and eligible private nonprofits. The amount of HMGP funding available to the applicant is based on the total estimated federal assistance. So I'm just going to share the next 2 slides are some eligible activities for the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, but this is not all encompassing. There's quite a bit that's not on this list, but just to get you a little bit familiar of what we cover. Acquisition of hazard-prone homes and businesses, protecting homes and businesses with permanent barriers to prevent flood water from entering. This would be levees, flood walls, and floodproofing. Elevating structures above known flood levels to prevent and reduce losses. Reconstructing a damaged dwelling on an elevated foundation. Structural retrofits to make a building more resistant to floods, earthquakes, wind, wildfire, and other natural hazards. Retrofits to utilities and other infrastructure to enhance resistance to natural hazards. Construction of safe rooms for both communities and individual residences in areas prone to hurricane and tornado activity. slope stabilization projects to prevent and reduce losses to structures, drainage improvement projects to reduce flooding, post-disaster code enforcement, and developing and adopting hazard mitigation plans, which are required for state, local, tribal, and territorial governments to receive funding for their hazard mitigation projects. Also included under that should be hazard mitigation planning related activities. So as far as the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program cost share, there is a non-federal cost share that is required for all sub-applications funded under HMGP. This can consist of cash, donated or third-party in-kind services, materials, or any combination. Generally, the cost share is 75% federal and 25% non-federal. One exception to the cost share requirement is for applicant and sub-applicant management costs, which FEMA will provide 100%. And now on to BRIC. So the BRIC, or Building Resilient Infrastructure in Communities program, is a new FEMA pre-disaster hazard mitigation program that replaces the existing pre-disaster mitigation, or PDM program. This is funded through a 6% allocation of funds, which is made after each major disaster declaration. And who is eligible to apply for funding? Under the BRIC program, federally recognized tribal governments may apply as either an applicant to FEMA for the tribal set-aside and/or national competition, or as a sub-applicant to an eligible state or territory for the state territory allocation and/or national competition. It's important to note that only federally recognized tribal governments are eligible to apply for the tribal set-aside. However, tribal governments that are not federally recognized can apply as a sub-applicant to an eligible state or territory. So what has changed this year from the last funding cycle? Well, the total funding has doubled from $500 million to $1 billion. This includes the tribal set-aside, which has increased by $5 million from $20 million to $25 million. $1 million is available per applicant, with $500,000 federal share available for planning and planning-related activities. For non-financial direct technical assistance, we have doubled the number of communities from 10 to 20 and streamlined the process. For the competition criteria, we've increased equity across multiple criteria: tiered building code points, increased points for BSEGs, or building code effectiveness grading schedule, and more points are allowable. The past cycle, we saw a total of 200 points, and this cycle, there's a total of 230. For economically disadvantaged rural communities, we've rebranded the small impoverished communities, which has been expanded in fiscal year 2021 to include rural communities. We've also tripled the points to economically disadvantaged communities. So we went from 5 points to 15 now. As I mentioned on the previous slide, there is a tribal set-aside of $25 million. If FEMA receives more eligible sub-applications from tribal sub-applicants than a given year's tribal set-aside, then CNCB Activities sub-applications and the applicant's highest ranked mitigation project will be selected until the tribal set-aside is depleted. All remaining tribal mitigation project sub-applications will be transferred and evaluated under the BRIC national competition, which has a $100 million federal share funding cap. In the event that the tribal set-aside funds remain after all CNCB activities and mitigation project selections are made, the remaining funds will be reinvested to support direct technical assistance to tribal communities. So this is, again, the same as what I mentioned with the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program. This doesn't capture everything. Everything that was listed in the HMA guidance is still eligible. Infrastructure projects remain eligible, such as infrastructure retrofit, localized flood risk reduction projects, non-localized flood risk reduction projects, non-structural retrofitting of existing buildings and facilities, structural retrofitting of existing buildings. And in addition, the following are also eligible activities: project scoping, building code projects, in particular meeting with the latest 2 consensus codes, the 2015 and 2018 International Building Codes, let's see, pre-award costs. Pre-award costs directly related to developing the BRIC grant application or sub-application that are incurred prior to the date of the grant award are allowed subject to FEMA approval at the time of award. Such costs may have been incurred prior to application submission. For example, gathering NEPA data or developing a BCA, preparing design specifications or conducting workshops, or meetings related to development and submission of sub-applications. To be eligible for BRIC funding, pre-award costs must be identified in an individual line item in the cost estimate of the sub-application. It's important to keep in mind applicants and sub-applicants who are not awarded awards or sub-awards will not receive reimbursement for the corresponding pre-award costs. Expanded wildfire activities, earthquake and earthquake early warning are also eligible activities. Please keep in mind projects must be cost effective, align with the hazard mitigation plan, be in conformance with the following stipulations: 44 CFR Part 9 and 44 CFR 60.3. So let's talk about capability and capacity building activities. CNCB activities are eligible under the state territory allocation and tribal set-aside, but are not eligible under the national competition. The combined cost for any CNCB activities under the tribal set-aside must not exceed 1 million federal cost share per applicant. CNCB activities are those which enhance the knowledge, skills, expertise of the current workforce to expand or improve the administration of mitigation assistance. They include building code activities, partnership activities, project scoping activities, mitigation planning, and mitigation planning related activities, as well as some other activities. Up to $500,000 of the state territory allocation and tribal set-aside may be used for mitigation planning and planning related activities per applicant. There are no caps on CNCB activity categories. As a reminder, project scoping, formerly advanced assistance, has its own sub-application within FEMA Go. Building code projects will be submitted via the project sub-application. Planning related activities, and partnerships will utilize the plan sub-application. And now that we've discussed eligible applicants, activities, funding options, and limits, let's talk about technical criteria. All mitigation projects are evaluated against 8 technical criteria, which include points for infrastructure projects, whether the activity mitigates risk to one or more lifelines, if nature-based solutions are incorporated, if the applicant has mandatory tribal, territory, or statewide building code adoption requirements, if the sub-applicant has a building code effectiveness grading schedule, rating of 1 to 5, if the application is generated from a previous qualifying award, or the sub-applicant is a past recipient of BRIC non-financial technical assistance. If the application has a non-federal cost share of at least 30% or 12% for economically disadvantaged rural communities, and is designated as an economically disadvantaged rural community. And as you can see, the point values vary across each of these 8 criteria. The 6 qualitative evaluation criteria that will be used in the BRIC national competition include risk reduction, resiliency effectiveness, climate change and other future conditions, implementation measures, population impacted, outreach activities, and leveraging partners. Please note that these are scored on a gradient, which you can see on the right side of the slide, as opposed to an all or nothing point allotment. And I'll just leave this up just for a second so everyone can see the scoring. And finally, for BRIC, we're going to just briefly go over direct technical assistance. So FEMA may prioritize direct technical assistance for communities that have not received a project award under PDM, FMA, or HMGP programs within the past 5 years, have not received an advanced assistance award under PDM, FMA, or HMGP within the past 5 years, are tribal entities, are economically disadvantaged rural communities, and or are a benefit disadvantaged community, and have demonstrated a compelling need for example, have significant social vulnerability or multiple major disaster declarations within the past 5 years. Communities interested in applying for direct technical assistance must submit one letter of interest to FEMA no later than 3 p.m. Eastern Time or 12 p.m. Pacific Time on January 28th, 2022. Although there is no required format for the letter of interest, at minimum, it should contain the following information: point of contact information, including name, position, address, phone number, and email, a description of the community's challenges and need for direct technical assistance, and the extent of the community's capacity to assist in the direct technical assistance activity and the staff available to commit to participate in the activity. Okay, and now we will talk about FMA, or the Flood Mitigation Assistance Program. So the Flood Mitigation Assistance Program, or FMA, is a competitive grant program for projects that reduce or eliminate the risk of repetitive flood damage to buildings insured by the NFIP, or the National Flood Insurance Program. This program is funded by an annual user fee by the National Flood Insurance Fund. Eligibility requirements for FMA: subapplicants must participate in the NFIP and not be on probation or be suspended. They need to be in good standing. All structures included in the project subapplications must be insured under the NFIP. As I previously mentioned, all structures included in the project subapplications must be insured under the NFIP before, during, and after mitigation. Structures identified in the subapplication must have an NFIP policy in effect at the FMA application start date and must maintain it for the life of the structure regardless of flood zone. For a mitigated structure that is required or demolished, structures identified in the subapplication must have an NFIP policy in effect at the FMA application start date and must maintain it until the transfer of property occurs, regardless of flood zone. Some eligible FMA activities include property acquisition and structure demolition, property acquisition and structure relocation, structure elevation, mitigation reconstruction, dry flood proofing of historic structures, dry flood proofing of non-residential structures, localized flood risk reduction projects, structural retrofitting of existing buildings, non-structural retrofitting of existing buildings and facilities, infrastructure retrofits, soil stabilization, project scoping, individual home and community flood, as well as some others, including hazard mitigation planning, technical assistance, and management costs, which are also all eligible activities. So FMA community flood mitigation project types. Eligible activities include, but are not limited to, localized flood control, flood water storage and diversion, floodplain and stream restoration, stormwater management, wetland restoration and creation. Elevations and Part 80 voluntary acquisitions are ineligible. And finally, this is just a funding breakdown. So we've got $160 million total available FMA funding. We've allocated up to $10 million for project scoping, $70 million for community flood mitigation projects, and $80 million for technical assistance, flood hazard mitigation planning, individual flood mitigation projects. Some project scoping priorities just to consider. There are 5. If the NFIP insured multiple loss communities, private partnerships cost share, community rating system participation, cooperating technical partners program participation, and CDC Social Vulnerability Index. Community flood mitigation priorities include NFIP insured multiple loss communities, NFIP policyholders, severe repetitive loss and repetitive loss properties, private partnership cost share, community rating system participation, advance assistance generated project, cooperating technical partners program participation, CDC Social Vulnerability Index, and consideration of climate change and other future conditions, or incorporation of nature-based solutions. Okay, so now we'll just go over a few upcoming events or important dates to keep in mind, and wrap up with some helpful resources. So this is just I know there's some dates on here that are older, but this is really just to show what headquarters and we regionally have provided, and include some important upcoming dates to remember. We will be providing, Region 9, we'll be providing a part 2 to our regional BRIC and FMA webinar on November 17th, and an agenda is forthcoming. So if you would like to attend, we would love to have you. My contact information can be found on my profile in Excel events, and it will be listed at the end of this slide deck. Also, just important to note, as I mentioned before, the deadline to submit applications in FEMA Go is January 28th, 2022 at 12 p.m. And if you experience any technical problems with FEMA Go, the deadline to report those is January 26th, 2022 at 12 p.m. Here are some really wonderful support materials. I'm not going to list them all, but I will point out my go-tos, which is the BRIC, HMGP, and FMA websites, the fiscal year 2021 NOFO, and the Hazard Mitigation Assistance guidance, which I think is listed on the next page, but I'm just going to leave this up just for a few moments so you can kind of see what we use on a regular basis. One thing I do want to highlight, the Mitigation Action Portfolio is a really, really, really wonderful resource. It kind of highlights different eligible activities that have been used across the nation, just to give you some great examples. And on the right side here, you'll see some great helplines to have saved. I would greatly encourage you to save all of these and utilize them while you develop your applications. The FEMA Go and BCA helplines those are going to be great ones to have. And with that, that concludes my presentation. I'll leave this up momentarily so you can see my email if you don't already have it before I hand it off to Chris. Yeah.
Jocelyn, thank you very much. This presentation, I noticed there were a lot of links. Is there,
Yes.
Are these links live in the presentation?
Yes, they should be. But I mean, would it be helpful? Can I upload into the chat the slide deck? Is that possible?
You certainly could try and upload into the chat. There is an attach feature, so that's a possibility. There's also, we can upload documents to the breakout session itself in the, so if we could get this presentation uploaded, then all the attendees could have the links and upload either way, whichever way.
Perfect.
So.
Okay, I will definitely do that. And I'll stop sharing now.
Sounds great. Thank you very much. Hey, y'all, just want to let y'all know we are monitoring the chat, not seeing much, and that's okay. But also, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat and we will get to them after our presentations. We definitely want to answer as many questions as we can. So just please if you're thinking of something, put it in the chat. Next up is Chris Poehlmann, and he is going to be discussing not just training, I noticed, but also he's going to be discussing IA and PA grants, which are a different type that dovetail with our Hazard Mitigation Assistance grants. Chris, give me just a second. Do you see that?
I do.
Okay. Go to it.
Great. We're going to just give you a quick overview on recovery division programs, and then I'm also going to speak a little bit about training that's available. So next slide, please. Okay. Many of you have probably seen this slide before, but also it's just a really good kind of a overview of what we can do as far as our individual assistance and public assistance grants, if in fact the tribe is awarded a tribal declaration. The chart represents a usual sequence of events in processing a request for disaster assistance from the Stafford Act Presidential Declaration. No funding for these programs is available unless the President of the United States declares a disaster declaration. The initial damage assessment is when the tribal government determines if they need FEMA's help, and they ask the region for a joint public preliminary damage assessment. Once the joint PDA or public, as I said, the preliminary damage assessment is complete, the tribal government determines that the damages exceed their resources. The tribal chief executive may submit a declaration request to the president through our FEMA regional office. FEMA makes a recommendation to the president based on the tribal chief executive's request. Then the president determination follows. Next, please. So there's a lot of information here. Obviously, the federal government has never been known for its lack of complexity, and we're not alone here. But the most common presidential declaration is with the most is available is highlighted here. Obviously, this changed quite a bit with the COVID-19, and we're doing a major assessment on how we may be able to change or enhance our programs in order to make this, much more user-friendly. Next, please. So the Stafford Act assistance will cover public assistance. As you can see, there's different categories in public assistance, A through G. What we're dealing with right now across the country is COVID-19. And the reason why we're trying to shoehorn these projects into the COVID-19 situation is because all that was declared was emergency protective measures, which is category B. As you can see, all these other categories were not part of COVID-19, which is why there's been a tremendous amount of work that's been done by the tribes in order to justify the FEMA covering this. There is normally a 75% federal and 25% non-federal share, but that has been adjusted by the president. So now it's 100% for COVID, just for COVID. Next, please. So this is the minimum damage amount for tribal governments. This does not apply to state, county, or city governments. So just keep in mind, this is a cutout that was put together by Congress. So $250,000 is the minimum damage amount. That is not damage that is covered by insurance and not damage that is covered by maybe some other program. So it's important that you realize that. It's important. But as you can see, the amount it doesn't constitute a trigger point for the declaration. That's where the preliminary damage assessment and this information that is put in there, that's where that's assessed. It's not just you hit the 250,000 and the president's going to sign it. There's a lot more complexity to it. So next, please. So individual assistance is the other program that we work with. Individuals and households programs will pay up to $37,900 maximum to each household, and that's set by the once again by Congress. So we cannot adjust that. As obviously, if you've lost your home from fire and there is no insurance on it, that is actually the max that FEMA can give you. And anybody that lives in California knows that that's not going to buy you a new house. Let's put it that way. And most FEMA programs are not designed to make you whole again, but just to get you back on your feet. There's other federal and state programs that can help with that. But as you can see with the individual assistance, it also covers other things, like in the case of COVID-19, crisis counseling program has been authorized for some areas. But this COVID-19 is a very unusual situation, as we all know. So we've been struggling to make sure that we get as much information as we can to headquarters, and they'll assess it and then give us an update on what they feel is going to work. And this, of course, is working with the Congress and the President. So it's at the very highest level of government for all of these things. The difference between individual assistance and public assistance is that individual assistance is a 75 to 25% cost share, and the President is not authorized to change this. So he could not change the individual assistance program to make it 100% as he can with public assistance. And next, please. This gives you a little bit more on individual assistance and the complexities and the special circumstances for tribal governments. The tribal government can decide who is going to get the individual assistance if, in fact, the President is going to authorize it. Enrolled tribal members is obviously that's going to go, but there's also the Indian tribal government can recognize as an enrolled member of that Indian tribe at the beginning of the incident period, can also include members of the tribal community, and also in some cases, tribal governments have included employees of the tribe. And that's something that always needs to be worked out, of course, but it's the way that the tribal guidance is, the tribal guidance is specifically called a pilot guidance because it has not been codified into law yet. It's still being worked on. And this has been worked on since 2013. So it's very complex, and as we all know, all tribes have different needs and wants. So they've opened it up and let us add to it as time goes on. Next, please. So hazard mitigation is obviously, we have mitigation experts here online, but this is also part of a declaration process. And hazard mitigation is 75-25. And once again, this is the HMGP project that was mentioned earlier. And the President is not authorized to adjust the cost share on HMGP. But since we have experts on with our mitigation division here, if there's additional questions on hazard mitigation, please let us know. Next, please. So this is just some links, and these are live links, so that if we send this out, you can get that information just by clicking on it. Next, please. So this is the training programs that we're going to go through. This once again, these are live links, but there are currently 5 courses in Emergency Management Institute for the tribal curriculum. And there's, as most of you know, these are listed as 580 series courses. The Emergency Management Framework for Tribal Governments is 580. The next one is 581, 582, 583, and the last one is 584. And that is something that is being worked on right now. One thing we realize is that the COOP for tribal governments has been really quite aged. So they're in the middle of working on that and updating it. The rest of the programs from 580 down to 583 have all been updated. So the next time that you go to one of these classes, it's going to be completely different. And we believe it's improved substantially because of tribal input. And there's a lot of tribal voices in these, which is the only way to go as far as I'm concerned. So as far as the Center for Domestic Preparedness, that's their motto is training the best for the worst. And they certainly do that. They have anyone that's been out there for training, it's been amazing. But there's also live links there. I did get a confirmation that Tribal Training Week is coming in March of 2022 in person. So that's what they're planning on. Of course, with our COVID situation, hopefully we can do that. But it is definitely in the planning, and very soon there'll be a chance for all tribes to be able to register. Next slide, please. This is my final slide, and I just wanted you to know that even if you have questions about EMI or any type of training that FEMA offers, all you have to do is contact Daryl Burton. He's our Region 9 training manager, very capable, amazing man, and he works in the same division that I do in national preparedness. But that's the end of my presentation, and I want to give as much time as I can for questions on BRIC, because I know that is a very important grant program for the tribes. So that's all I have, sir.
Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you. Great presentation, both Christopher and Jocelyn. Great presentations. So what we have here, I was unable to see the chat while while the slides were there. And I see some wonderful comments from Clifford and Suzanne. This is the time for questions, folks. If there's anything about our presentation or about the programs that we presented on, BRIC, HMGP, FMA, IAPA, training initiatives, now's the time. Please let us know any questions that you may have. Please put them in the chat. That's the best way for us to see that. Jocelyn, I have a quick question for you. If you're there.
Go ahead.
Sorry, of course you're there. I apologize. I noticed with the two different criteria, there's the technical criteria and there's the qualitative criteria. Now, this is under BRIC.
Yes.
You had mentioned that for one of the criteria, it was a graded scale, if I used that word correctly.
Yes.
Are both criteria a graded scale, or just the one, and which one is which?
No, sorry. So I probably didn't make that super clear. So the technical criteria, that point allotment is the qualitative is scored on a gradient.
Okay.
Yes, and there's two. Let me pull it up again. Sorry.
It's certainly.
There's two.
So, go ahead.
No, you're fine. So there is different scoring options for qualitative. This isn't how the technical criteria is. The technical criteria, each different component, there's a total of 20 points that are available. And it goes from 5, 10, 15, 20. For the BRIC qualitative criteria, there's a scoring option, and then there's a degree of meeting that criteria. So it goes from not at all to exceeds, and then not addressed to beyond excellent. And I actually have, I think I have, if it's helpful to everyone, I do have a slide deck that breaks down each one of the criteria. So I can also post that, I think, in the session, add documents. I tried to add the slide deck from this presentation, and I don't know if it actually worked, but I can add that too if that would be helpful.
That might be. I think adding documents would be a great way to another avenue to provide that.
Okay.
And Suzanne confirms that yes, Jocelyn, the slides are posted in the documents part of the Excel events.
Okay.
And it says the screen is black. So don't know if you're able to share those. Were you able to share those slides?
Oh, to post it or show them right now?
Both, but they're our attendees are just letting us know that the screen is black. So let me try one of these. To our wonderful attendees, you know, if I'm on the screen now, you may regret confirming letting us know that the screen is black. Trying to get some information to share if you wanted to share those criteria slides, Jocelyn. Video feed.
I'm gonna try to pull it up right now. Hold on just a minute.
Okay. So while you're pulling that up, let me see if I can think about this. It sounds like the technical criteria, is it safe to say, is it accurate to say that the technical criteria is pass, fail? Your application either is awarded the points for a given technical criterion or it's not. Whereas the qualitative criteria, it's not pass, fail, it's that gradated scale.
That's correct.
Okay.
And I'm going to share my screen right now. I just got the my other PowerPoint pulled up. Can everyone see?
I am unable to. Yes, it has just popped up.
Okay, so so this is the slide deck that I was talking about, and I can pull these and also share these so that everyone has access to them. But this is really great because it goes into not only the qualitative, but I have all of the technical criteria. It really dives into, you know, what it is exactly that we're asking for, and it provides examples of each. And I don't know, how much time do we have left? I'll go.
We have a little bit more than 5 minutes left, so we have some time.
Okay, cool. So let me see if I can, sorry, I'm horrible at this. Okay, so I'll just try to kind of go through these rather quickly if we don't have any questions in the chat. That way everyone kind of understands what exactly the qualitative criteria is. So for the first qualitative criteria, we're looking at risk reduction and resilience. And on the left-hand side, you're going to see what elements that we're looking for within the sub-application. So that would be effective risk reduction, effective increased resilience, provides ancillary benefits, and leverages innovation. And then on the right side, you're going to see what should be included in the scope of work in order to meet this criteria. So how will the proposed project reduce risk and to what level? How will the proposed project improve resilience? What ancillary benefits will the project provide and how does the project leverage or demonstrate innovation for your community? So for the second qualitative criteria, this would be climate change and other future conditions. And we're looking to see if the sub-application describes how the project will enhance climate adaptation, be responsive to the effects of climate change, such as sea level rise, be responsive to the effects of other future conditions, and cite data sources, assumptions, and models. For criteria 3, this would be implementation measures. And we're looking to see if the sub-application describes how the costs will be managed, the schedule will be managed, the project will be successfully implemented, and how innovative techniques to facilitate implementation will be incorporated. And the project's scope of work identifies technical and managerial staff and resources to successfully implement the project. And then again, on the right side, you're going to see just some questions to consider while you're working through your scope of work.
Now that's interesting that for each criterion, now this is just a qualitative criterion, each criterion on the right side, there's pointers to the applicant to say, please consider this. This is the type of information the reviewer will be looking for.
Right. And that's why this is, I think, will be a really great resource while you're planning your applications, just to be able to refer to this and see what exactly we're looking for. I know the point system can be kind of confusing, especially considering that we do have 2 different types of ways that we are doing these reviews, the technical and qualitative. So this is definitely going to be helpful. Okay, so I guess I'll wrap up. We have 3 more. So for criteria 4, we're looking at the population impacted, and we're looking to see if the sub-application demonstrates community-wide benefits, the proportion of the population that will be impacted, including a description of the disadvantaged communities, how the project was selected and designed to maximize positive impacts and minimize negative impacts to any disadvantaged populations, and how the proposed project is clearly benefiting a disadvantaged community. And then for criteria 5, we have outreach activities. So this sub-application would describe the outreach strategy and supporting activities appropriate to the project in advancing community mitigation, the types of community planning processes leveraged, and how input from a diverse range of stakeholders, including people from disadvantaged communities, was gathered and incorporated into project conception and design. And then finally, we have BRIC Qualitative Criterion 6, leveraging partners. So this project sub-application would incorporate partnerships that ensure the project meets community needs, provide an explanation on how these partnerships benefit disadvantaged communities, and an explanation of the anticipated outcome of those partnerships. So leveraging resources such as financial, material, and educational resources, coordinating multi-jurisdictional projects, heightened focus on equity-related issues. And then again, on the right side, you'll see some considerations while you're planning.
That is excellent information, because it says not just a list of the aspects, the characteristics of the criterion, but also more insight on the right side to what the reviewers will be looking for in a quality application. And of course, one assumes answering those questions on the right, or yes, they are questions generally, will increase the points received for the qualitative criterion for a given application.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly.
Something to note, when is the deadline for BRIC applications? I believe that
would be, sorry, January 28th.
Yes. Okay. And FEMA Go it's a great system, but it's not necessarily the most easy to navigate. So is this something where folks can get all their material together and then plan on 1, maybe 2 days of entry into FEMA Go, or should they be planning for more?
I'm sorry, what was that? I have a.
That's okay. It's my understanding that FEMA Go is where we enter the application. It's my understanding that FEMA Go may be a bit complex. So is this something where the applicants can gather their information and just plan on spending a day or maybe 2 days entering the information into FEMA Go, or should they plan for more time entering information into FEMA Go?
I really think it depends on what type of activities you're submitting and the complexity. And I would probably do it before, a few days before that deadline, because like I mentioned in one of my last slides, the date to report any issues with FEMA Go and receive assistance is January 26th. So that's 2 days before the deadline. So I would just advise everyone to do it before, especially if you have multiple applications that you're going to be submitting.
Yes. Okay. That makes good sense. Just generally, not leave it to the last minute, but also, like you mentioned, if there's multiple applications, multiple efforts are required.
Yes.
Okay. Christopher, Jocelyn, thank you both very, very much. I'm seeing some great feedback. Thank you very much to the attendees for the feedback, letting us know that when we are broadcasting and when we are not, when the screen is black and when it is not. I'm not seeing any more questions, and we are past the broadcast time. So I'll hold open for about 15 seconds. If you have a question, please post it. If not, we will end the session. So let's hold for a little bit. Again, if you have a question, please post it now. Okay.
So I do want to share, I do have a document that has all of the slides that I showed, and it also has some specific examples on projects and how each of those criteria would look in real life. So I would like to post that. If I post that right now and we end the broadcast, I know this is more of an IT question. I'm sorry, everyone. Can everyone still access it? The documents that I post?
I believe it would be better to post those in the under the session in the main Excel events page where it says add documents to this session. That is still live. Yes.
Okay, that's what I meant. Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Yes. Wonderful. Suzanne, Tracy, Clifford, thank you very much. And also Bernadette, thank you very much. And thank you to all attendees. We hope we provided some great information for you. Please feel free to connect with us. We're all registered with the conference. And so if you wish, connect with us. You can get our contact information. Excuse me. But with that, we are done with the broadcast, and we hope you have a wonderful conference. Talk soon. Bye-bye.